Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the YouTube channel that is my channel. We got a singular book review today, guys. Singular book today. We're gonna be talking about The Giver by Lois Lowry. Everybody's favorite book they read in sixth grade or middle grade, middle school. I actually came back to this book. I read it in sixth grade, and I found it at a thrift store for like a dollar or two. I picked it up, and I thought I would go back to a story that I thought was pretty fascinating when I was a kid, and see how my opinion has maybe changed on it. So this is actually a reread, but yeah. Cue the intro. So I think there is a reason why a book like The Giver is often taught in the education system, especially to younger age groups, such as like middle schoolers. And that's because The Giver proposes some pretty big, interesting concepts, but in a way that a younger audience could understand and sort of comprehend. And so, give them some sort of material on their level that they can work with. One of the comparisons I made was sort of like it's like 1984 Light, Light Edition, or like a Brave New World Light Edition. It doesn't really get into the nitty gritty or super expand on all the implications and facets to a super duper authoritarian regime. But it does display some of the issues with a government or a system as such, and the negative consequences it can have on the people who are under its rule. To sort of jump off of the last point of it being an accessible story to younger audiences, is that the world building here is very subtle but well done. It's not a slap in the face. You sort of pick up on little things that might seem strange to you or is not aligned with our normal world. Because at a very brief face value, the world of the giver seems very similar to our own world. But then you sort of learn some things about how this society functions that alarms your red flags, even if you are a younger person. For example, families being limited to having only so many children, or the fact that you are prescribed or given a job, you not pick your own profession. Um, and so you sort of get this like authoritarian, almost like technocratic vibe to this like the society and how it's being ran. We want people, the most informed people in the positions that they would be the best in. None of that picking wherever you want to be, right? If you can't draw, you're not going to be an artist. If you don't have people skills, but you're smart, then uh, sorry, I couldn't think of a joke. But yeah, the society sort of just runs like a well-oiled machine. There's not much like culture or life to it, I guess you could say, for a simpler term. I almost got this, you know, that plus the sort of technocratic vibe to how things are ran. I almost had the theory of that these characters were secretly androids, maybe. Well, not all of them, but our main protagonist, Jonas, right? He has this ability called Seeing Beyond, which we learn later is sort of a fantastical ability that he has. But at first, I had the prediction that maybe he was like a robot or something, and his like eyes were glitching because we get this scene where you know, Lois Lowry doesn't go into incredible detail of how the apple changes. We just know that while Jonas is tossing an apple with his friend, as he watches the arc of it go to Asher, his friend, he notices the apple changes, but he can't describe why because he doesn't have the words for it. He doesn't have the context to describe what is different about it because he hasn't met the giver yet and come to understand what his power entails. But no, they're not androids. I was wrong about that. Uh, but yeah, the society itself, it's a very neutered society. For example, like this also ties into the very authoritarian uh, style of governing, is that everyone is administered a pill that sort of takes their sexual drive away. So people take this pill every morning and they really don't get those types of urges or tendencies anymore. We discover this through a scene where Jonas is starting to get he's starting to have wet dreams. Okay, I'll just go ahead and say it. We've all been there, right? We've all wet the bed a time or two, dreaming of like that yoga ball sitting in the corner of your room, looking extra like circular. But yeah, we Sue learn through his interaction with his mother that everybody takes a pill. and so they don't really have those urges anymore. So they are everybody in this world is kind of robot-like, especially with the scenes where the families sit down for dinner and they discuss their emotions for the day, how they felt. It seems very like the way they approach emotion seems very simple-minded, maybe, or not like not fully understanding that emotion can be a very complicated matter. It's not something that you can sort of scientifically pick apart. Well, I guess you could with like psychology. I don't know. Maybe that's a bad point. Let's move on. Well, to sort of circle back to earlier what I was saying about some of the big questions that the giver gives us, especially for a young kid to consider. And one of these I actually read in a post. I believe it was Goodreads. I think maybe I should find the person who posted, but it was a great comment. They said that the giver questions what is love, right? Because Jonas, after some experiences with the giver, and he sort of learns that this whole community has sort of been trained to uh, be neutered, not have memories of like color. They call it sameness. They've all been trained to sort of be the same, right? And so his training with the giver reveals to him that the what Jonas was noticing different in the apple was that he was starting to see the color red. That was his ability to see beyond. And so as the giver transmutes memories to him, he starts to discover things that had been blocked off or obscured to him before, due to his upbringing where he grew up in this authoritarian regime. Yeah, we learned that all these people have been sort of forced to be the same. They don't know what pain is really. Anytime someone gets hurt, they're administered medicine from a government representative comes in and gives them medicine, and so they don't know what real pain is. Joseph experienced real pain until he gets a memory of getting a sunburn. And then he's like, oh, this is what they meant, that I will go through a lot of pain trying to become the next receiver of memories. Where was I going with this? Yeah, but so we have a scene where Jonas, who now has a wider base of knowledge and experience than even his parents, comes home and asks his parents, do y'all love me, mom and dad?" Oh, and I mean, this is a good question. I asked this question once. Uh, but again, his parents respond in this very sort of like AI generated prompt response way. They're sort of like, well, we are very proud of you. We are uh happy that you are part of our family unit, but it's like but they say that using love isn't the right word because society is very particular with language, right? The precision of language. And they're saying love may be not the right word. It's too silly. It means too much, right? Love is too broad in what it can mean. And so that's not really the right word, Jonas. Yeah, I wouldn't say. So then you ask yourself, well, then what is love? They say it's a broad word, and it poses a good question. What makes up love? What aspects come together to make you love somebody? Because I guess loving chocolate and loving your partner are two different things, right? And this is sort of the parent's point. There's a wide spectrum to love. So I think that's something to sort of think about. What is love? Is loving chocolate, loving your partner the same thing? Obviously there's levels to love. That's just one of the examples that we sort of get through Jonas of sort of bigger, more interesting questions that kids can maybe consider for the first time in their young lives. I think a good way to just summarize this book in a whole, it's basically like the allegory of the cave from Plato, right? We have Jonas. He's given this sort of perception of reality. This is how things are ran. Then he leaves the cave, right? He gets the memories from the giver. He knows what life with freedom, with love, with emotions, with real emotions is like. Um, and he sort of has to deal with the consequences. For example, the first receiver candidate that was excused or was sent to elsewhere, um, she ended up taking her own life because she had received all of this knowledge, right? The burden of knowledge. It's a very common discourse you might see online that, smart people may be generally more sad people. Uh, Ignorance is bliss, I suppose, is the argument there. But yeah, she actually, so we learn when people are sent elsewhere, they're not actually sent to another community or another location. They're actually just given a syringe of something that puts them that kills them. Uh, and when Jonas discovers that his father, a nurturer, has been sending children to their deaths, basically, not actually, putting them in the crane's beak and or the fucking freaking sorry, I didn't mean to cuss, guys. The seagull, or what is the bird that delivers babies? Put in the comments if you know. But yeah, back on track. We learned that Joseph's dad is you know killing these babies to sort of make sure that the population in the society doesn't get too high, because the higher population you have, the more mouths you have to feed, the more people are likely to starve. And starving is pain. We don't want that. We want to control everything, so everyone has this like perfectly non-perfect life, right? Yeah, so I guess another one of those big questions is what is the cost of knowledge? Is it worth the price? I guess you could say, and you maybe not even knowledge, like emotion too. Would it be better to not feel emotion? Maybe a more stoic approach to life. Would it make life better or worse? And these are some things that Lois Lowry definitely dives into. Once Jonas leaves the community and he is struggling to survive on his own, he debates, maybe I should have stayed in the community. Maybe I should have. What would my life? Maybe it would have been better had I been sheltered and nurtured and not given this power of knowledge. Because with great power comes how's that line go? But yeah, that's one of the questions, right? And that's something that kids can really chew on, like, the styles of governing, right? Maybe in some aspects, the community was doing something you could say was correct, or, from their point of view, is admirable because they are keeping all these people well fed. They're preventing them from being hurt, preventing them from falling into depressive episodes, because emotion is something that's regulated. And so that's really the big meat and potatoes question of this novel, I would say, right? Uh, is it, is the top of the roller coaster worth the dip in the bottom? Is the high worth the low that comes after? And I think that is a pretty interesting question, especially for kids at a young age to sort of consider, like, that type of dilemma of the human condition. And I did tear through this book. The prose was average, I would say, accessible. I think the fact that it is written to a younger audience helped me get through it pretty quick. Um, but it was that subtle world building and my interest in how the giver and Jonas's relationship and their newfound knowledge would advance. The father plot twist did come back to me around the middle of the book. I did remember that from sixth grade. I remember there being a something, the ending being what being the key factor of why I remember this book. It being something pretty, like, at that age when I read it, I was like, dude, that's so messed up, man. It was super deep. It is still kind of deep, of course, but yeah, that was revealed to me early on. But I really did enjoy The Giver. It's I would say it's part of the classics, or the education curriculum darlings, one of them. It's for good reason. There was some things that I did not enjoy about this book. I did have some critiques, of course. One of them would be a scene where Jonas is playing a game of war with kids. Right there, they have pretend guns and they're pretending to kill each other or whatever. And of course, for Jonas, this is pretty traumatizing because he knows what war actually is like, because the giver gave him the memories of war, of when there was war in the past. But I don't know. I was confused because how would these? Obviously, the kids don't know what war is, and Lois Lowry points that out. They're playing a game; they don't know it's war. But how would they know what guns are? Do the security in this community society own weapons and firearms? I think that might go against the community ideals, right? To even have the idea of violence being something that these kids can access, right? Or weapons, or pretend war. If they have no reference to what a weapon is, or what to do with a weapon, or the consequences of using a weapon on somebody, then, like, how are they doing it now? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I just thought that maybe that was a plot hole. How these kids would even know about it. 'Cause it seems like the community, the society, wouldn't even teach about firearms to kids, because then it would sort of a make their authoritarian regime harder to instill, to give kids the idea that there's some sort of chance to rebel. And also, it could take them down a path of, well, okay, what are weapons used for? Oh, they're for killing people. Oh, okay, well, now I'm feeling sad, right? And we don't want people to feel emotion. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong there. It's not a plot hole, and they could uh, reference war, I guess, or come up with that game without having any prior knowledge of what weapons are. Obviously, for all my viewers, put down in the comments if I'm incorrect or there's something I'm wrong on. I always like to correct myself when I'm wrong, and to learn where maybe I was ignorant. I just don't know. I don't see that being feasible in the society. These kids to play war, but also, um, the ending was sort of, we take a more like spiritualistic route there at the end, with Jonas. Maybe I might leave this review spoiler free. So I'll just leave it here that the ending is sort of ambiguous. Was this the giver's elaborate plan that he had all along for Jonas, which would explain, you know, it would give an explanation for why Jonas, how he came to the situation and ended up succeeding. Um, or, it could be one of those things where, well, I can't say that would be a spoiler, but it could be a something that's not actually happening, but it is a sort of mental construct by the character to cope with what is happening. I'll leave it there. But overall, I enjoyed The Giver. I'd probably give it like a 3 out of 5 stars if I had to give it a rating. Like I said, it doesn't really pose any really maybe critical questions that you can really chew on for a while, like a 1984. But it is entertaining, and it does have some things to think about, right? Questions about the human condition, about how we live our lives, and what do we trade off for happiness? What should we aspire to? What emotion wise? More similar to The Giver. So if you're interested in these stories, maybe check out The Giver. One would be, I guess, Flowers for Algernon. This novel talks about the burden of knowledge. Basically, is the pursuit of knowledge? What's the sacrifice? Is it worth it? That sort of discussion on that topic. And another one was the ones who walk away from Omelas, a short story by Ursula K. Le Guin. And sort of the theme and the message of this short story is, how much are we willing to sacrifice for the greater good? Sort of the Machiavellian term, like, does the means justify the end product? Uh, so yeah, if you're interested in those stories, maybe check out The Giver as well. Um, don't really know what I'm saying there, but yeah, I think it was just your average decent book. Uh, who would I recommend The Giver to? I mean, if you're a fan of if you're a fan, I guess, like, I wouldn't say political science because it doesn't really dive really into the politics of this like government too much, really. I don't know. I think if you want a palate cleanser, something that's easy to read and is interesting to think about, I would give the Giver a try. If you're into classics, obviously read The Giver. If you want something maybe to read to your kids or to recommend to one of your teenage kids, they'll probably say no and doom scroll TikTok and bed rot. But maybe they might be interested in reading it or giving it a shot. But yeah, that'll be the review for today. The Giver, decent read. Not anything too game changing, but it begs some good questions, and it's a very accessible text. So yeah, thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.